Stephen King's The Stand is the longest book I've ever read in my entire life, but I also have a slight phobia of reading big books. So how did I manage to get through it? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Rian from Genre Blender, and I wanted to talk about big books, and specifically about being afraid of or intimidated by big books. Here's my example, the complete and uncut edition of The Stand, which was published in 1990 with the inclusion of 400 odd pages of material that was cut from the original 1978 manuscript. And it comes in at a whopping 1,211 pages, or almost 48 hours for the audiobook. That's ridiculous. That's a huge commitment no matter how you slice it. And me, being me, decided it would be a great idea to start a author project for Stephen King, considering I'd never read any of his books before until last year. And I had this amazing opportunity to start at the very beginning with his very first book and work my way through his entire oeuvre chronologically. Which, spoiler alert for an upcoming video, I actually skipped his first book and went straight to the second one, long story. But I'm enjoying the project a ton. But this meant I couldn't simply skip past The Stand just because it's a chonker of a book. Nor did I want to skip it, since it's so highly regarded and has become a big part of popular culture. The truth is I was kind of looking forward to reading it, more out of curiosity than anything else, and maybe a little bit because it's slightly more sci-fi compared with the majority of Stephen King stories. So I had to somehow overcome my phobia of big books. Is there a name for that? I feel like there should be a name for it. There's a name for every phobia, right? One second. Megalobibliophobia. The internet tells me this is an informal term, not widely used. I kind of like it. Now I want to be clear about something. I'm not bothered by complex books. It's usually the opposite. I often seek out books that have challenging ideas, especially philosophical ideas, or books that require some prior knowledge or have a unique writing style. All of those are kind of my jam. So my phobia has nothing to do with the complexity of a book. It is absolutely 100% to do with the length of a book. Specifically, I think the time commitment involved and the amount of time I will have to spend with said book to the exclusion of all other books and possibly all other activities and hobbies within my areas of interest. So I guess it's FOMO, in other words. Maybe you can relate, let me know, but I'm one of those people who has a million different interests, and to me everything is exciting and amazing and interesting and wonderful. And when you're that kind of a person and also an adult with adult responsibilities, you find you have an interest in everything and absolutely no free time to spend with any of these interests. So that's really what I'm getting at when I say I'm afraid of reading big books. I look at The Stand, I look at this giant monster of a book, and then I look at my TBR pile, which I want to get to, I'm excited to get to, and something happens in the neurons of the grey matter up here. I freeze, I have trouble getting started, I experience inertia. And the same thing happens when I start reading a longer book, then put it down, do something else, and I go to pick it up again, and I just can't. That is until I read The Stand. From the handful of Stephen King books I've read, and remember, chronological author project, it's gonna take me a while, maybe a lifetime. There is one singular observation I've made that explains to me why his books are so popular, so magical, and are enjoyed by so many different people and readers of all experience levels. His stories are very simple in terms of plot and characters, even his writing style, and there's nothing especially complex going on. In fact, what is happening at any given time, or the situation a character finds themselves in, is always very clear. Some authors like to intentionally obfuscate the plot or the character's actions to create confusion in order to keep the reader feeling slightly off kilter, constantly wondering if there's something they've missed, or perhaps something that will become clear on a reread, or by talking about it with other people afterwards. Jeff Vandermeer is an author who famously writes this way. It's part of the appeal of his work. You never quite know with 100% certainty what's going on, and half the fun is trying to figure that out. With Stephen King, at least the books I've read so far, I'm never wondering if I've missed something, and yet I also wouldn't say his writing is dumbed down in order to create this clarity. In fact, I think Stephen King's writing is very dynamic and engaging, and his character work is really something else, despite being rather simple and straightforward. He creates tension and suspense in other ways, and he does a very good job of it. without sacrificing cohesion, the glue that holds the story together. So what we end up with is maximum immersion. The reader's attention isn't drawn to the writing itself, which is a feature, not a bug, with some books and authors, including some of my favourites. Rather, the writing falls away in order for the reader to be there in the world with the characters, wondering what happens next. And what does that do? Well, it makes you want to read it faster. And that is the very definition of a page turner. You just want to know what happens next in the story. Just one more chapter. 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 Just one more. It took me about a month in total, on and off, to finish The Stand. I read it as a mix of physical, digital, and audiobook. Don't get me started. I'm not proud of the fact that I've bought this book 3 times. It wasn't intentional. Mostly. I chose to pick it up and read it above doing other things. I prioritized reading it. If I had a spare moment, I was reading it. If I was doing some boring adulting task, I was listening to it at the same time. And for context, I'm not someone who multitasks well. Or at all. But I never felt like I was missing something. Or just a passenger along for the ride. I was engaged with this story. These characters were my companions for a whole month. Nick's story in particular, I was super invested in. And Larry's, it was really entertaining. And Franny, and Stu, and Tom, Joe, the whole giant cast of characters. And while there were chapters that were slower in pace than others, I never really felt bored. More importantly, I was never bogged down or tripped up, or confused by the writing. The point is, I devoured this book, despite being intimidated by the length of it at first. And the truth of it is, it has taken me longer to read much shorter books before. The length of a book, almost, in some ways, kind of doesn't matter. And realizing that, and understanding why, has helped me get over this this big book phobia that I've had for a while now, and really for most of my adult life. And knowing and experiencing in practical terms that the length of a book does not necessarily correspond to the amount of time that it will take me to finish it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. Now, to be clear, my preference is still for shorter books. I personally think a lot of novels are just too damn long, for no good reason, and could do with a bit of an edit to leave a bunch of words on the cutting room floor, but that's an editing issue and a separate video entirely. My advice for anyone experiencing big book phobia is twofold. First, be intentional with the book choice. Find a book that has the power to immerse you within its pages. And I mean immersive in any of the ways that you personally find stories to be immersive. If you're a character-driven reader like I am, maybe that means finding a book with characters you enjoy spending time with for extended periods of time. I find realistic dialogue always works to immerse me within the story, which is probably why I found The Stand really enjoyable. If you live for world building like my genre blender co-host Chris, then it's probably a bit easier, specifically if you enjoy fantasy. But whatever it is that keeps you engaged and hooked on a book, choose a big book that does that thing. Second, work towards creating a reading habit, if you don't already have one. Now, this is not an instructional video for that. There are a million of those on YouTube already, but I feel like having an established reading habit becomes infinitely more important when you're trying to get through a book that's on the larger side. Usually that advice boils down to do whatever you need to do to increase the likelihood of picking up the book and reading a few pages at a time, instead of just doing other things like doom scrolling or staring at the wall while thinking about all your life's regrets. It's surprising how quickly you can read 1,211 pages just by stealing little pockets of time here and there. Then it's just a matter of rinse and repeat. And I'm actually doing exactly that again with Exodus, the Archimedes engine by Peter F. Hamilton, which is also a massive chonker of a book and which I'm already a quarter of the way through. I figure I'm on a roll here, why not just keep going? I'm reading it as a buddy read with Chris here on the channel. If you're interested in joining our buddy reads, come and join the Genre Blender Discord. The link's in the description below, and while you're down there, give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe for more, and please let me know in the comments what is your experience with big books. Do they intimidate you like they do for me? Or are you the kind of reader that I'm most likely very jealous of? Let me know. Until next time, stay curious, happy reading. Then it's just a matter of rinse and repeat. And I'm actually doing exactly that again myself with Exodus.